Hello, Dr. Moore. This particular lesson we're going to talk about is called Undermining Your Ability to Excel. Yes, sometimes we have resistance towards things that actually will allow us to grow. And one of my favorite quotes is, any resistance is a form of self-sabotage. Right? Scientifically, we know about resistors, right? We have circuit boards, and when currents and electrons are trying to move past a resistor, it stops the flow of that, right? And so a lot of times we want to try to control things that are happening in our lives, and we resist those things that we can't control. And so developing awareness around the things that you resist the most may be some of the biggest opportunities for you to actually grow, evolve, and expand. And so have you ever lowered your intelligence around somebody? I mean, I can say that I have, especially growing up in a community where maybe intelligence or being intelligent wasn't fully appreciated. But the idea is that when we begin to dim our light in a way where we want to make people around us feel comfortable, we may not know how to turn that light back on fully and as brightly so we can be all of what we can be. But at the end of the day, undermining our ability to excel is also connected to fear and how do you manage your fear. It's being able to identify some of these bad habits that we may have that are stopping us from fully maximizing who we are. And so the techniques you'll be covering in this lesson will give you the ability to begin to identify the things that you fear, so then you can break that down and dissolve it and move on to that next challenge and to the next, so you can reach that highest level. Win. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are going to dive into this lesson on undermining your ability to excel, like Microsoft, right? All right, Andrew, go ahead. That picture at the very front of this, what do you think the illustrator is trying to say?
Well, it looks like a sock is being knit, but you can also interpret it as maybe a tie, like you're knitting your professionalism.
Okay, interesting. Anybody else? Go ahead.
I see it as like you can see that like the sock is being knit with the yarn that's already been created to the sock, so it's like using what you already have, like reusing that, but you're also destroying something and not letting yourself reach your full potential.
Okay. Anybody want to add anything? Go ahead, Tom.
It's like the tip of the sock is like the thread is being reused to knit the top part of the sock. So it seems like it's a route that you couldn't really go anywhere because
Okay, so a zero-sum game. You're taking from the bottom to then put the thing on the top, but you're not adding anything. Go ahead, Andrew.
I mean, there's like different lengths for all the stripes, right? So it could probably be maybe referring to like how our trials and tribulations could sometimes give us a lot of success and sometimes give us very little success.
Okay, I like that. Abstract, metaphorical thinking. All right. Zebra. Okay. Anybody else? All right. So maybe Sophia, read that quote for us real quick, right underneath that.
Resistance by definition is self-sabotage.
All right, what do you think he's saying there?
Well, resistance, I would assume, is referring to your resistance to self-growth or resistance to new things, and that is self-sabotage because you're resisting or you're inhibiting yourself from growing. So that's why I consider it self-sabotage.
Okay, so hindering yourself from growing through trying to resist change or trying to resist something that's in front of you. All right, does anybody want to add anything? What about the folks out there in virtual land? We got to get them to turn their cameras on. What are you thinking, Max?
So when I thought about this, I thought about resistance to being able to adapt. So you're kind of like resisting, you're resisting your capabilities, like you're limiting yourself on your ability to adapt to something. So then you're like resisting change.
Okay,
In
so
terms of adaptability.
I'm also just gonna say, even just the idea of a resistor, right? So folks that are taking physics yet, the second semester, when you have current that's moving around some kind of circuitry and it hits this resistor, it slows down, right? Like it's moving and it slows down. So sometimes we try to control what's happening to us. We think we have control over it and we try to control the flow, right? So just you saying, and I'm gonna use my own, metaphor, just say that you have a blessing that you don't believe that you are ready for yet. You will slow down and not receive that blessing because you want to control it in the way that you believe you need to have it or have it be presented to you to be good. Right? That happens a lot more than people think. And I always tease folks when I see or notice that there's a blessing they have in their life, but they're like, no, I need to do this first, I need to do that first. I'm like, well, if you don't want your blessing, I receive it. Pass it on to me. What's up? Right? Because they were resisting and trying to stop something and I feel like as human beings, we want to be in alignment, right, with the source. If you really believe there's a divine creator and divine intelligence that created us, we need to be in alignment with the source and then let it flow to us. Not stop the flow, right? We want to be in the flow. We want to be in the zone. We want to be able to just move into that our super abilities. But stopping something from moving to us is actually sabotaging us from actually allowing that to flow to us, if that makes any sense. Go ahead.
Do you think that a resistance both causes self-sabotage and also originates from self-sabotage? Because when you said students slow down their lessons to control them, would that also be stemming from past experiences where they felt a need to sort of slow down everything so they could be to the level of ability that they falsely believe they have?
I agree. It's I'm not saying that we shouldn't be measured in how we go about doing new things, that we shouldn't pay attention and understand what our approach is and what steps we're taking. But at the same time, sometimes we have trauma, as I think you're suggesting from a previous experience potentially, that you're saying, no, right? Because of that, even though I'm a different person now, right? Who you are today, you are different than who you were yesterday, period. Who you are in this moment, you are someone different than when you were 5 minutes ago. And when we have limits on our belief and our abilities, when we believe that we're not capable of doing something, then you will resist an opportunity because you believe that this test is really too hard, I'm not ready for this class, you know what I'm saying? All these things that we believe are mindset, right? So that's why I always say that our mindset is everything. Your belief in your ability will either hinder you from achieving a task, or will open up the floodgates to the possible solution and for you achieving that task. Your mind does that. And that's the main reason why I always tell folks to like not listen to they, right? Because they said that this class is real hard, and they said that this professor is X, Y, or Z, or they said that you should study this way, or, you know, I'm like, who is they? And then on top of that, I'm like, when they said this about this course, did you ask they, how did you study for this course? Did you do the homework problems? Did you do all the problems? Did you take time tests? When you got your exams back, did you go through every single problem you got wrong and understand the reason why? And maybe you're just smarter than they. So if you didn't exhaustively ask them all these questions to get a sense of who they are, why are you listening to they? Go ahead.
How do you balance the idea of being confident within yourself and then and kind of the latter of the other side of that of being a little too overconfident and not listening to they sometimes that may actually have good advice for you and things like that?
I guess from my standpoint, there's nothing wrong with listening to people and putting it into your mind as data points. You're not putting that much weight on it, it's just a data point, one in from this person, right? But in regards to yourself, I really believe that we should stress test ourselves. Like if you have and believe that you've mastered this concept, then every single concept that's somewhat related to that, you need to go back and stress test. The belief that you have in that, does it match up? Does it line up? Does it make sense? And if it doesn't, it should bother you and you should figure out why. So you're actually developing confidence by really having built up a muscle of mastery of understanding, right? And you always want to leave room for growth because no one knows everything, right? Like it's just, there's too many mysteries out there, right? So that's kind of how I would probably go about doing it. But like, if I believe I understand something, I'm trying to connect that understanding to everything that's anything remotely to that moving forward for the rest of my life. And if when I do connect it to that new thing, it makes sense, then hormones and pheromones get released in me that make me feel good. I'm like, damn, I'm winning, right? When you went from and studied that third semester of physics and you learned about thermo and it connected to the second semester of chemistry, when you learned it in Chemistry 101B, you're like, oh damn, right? That makes you feel good. But if you're like, that doesn't make sense, or damn, this is totally different than what I thought, there's nothing wrong with that because in that moment, it gives you a chance to grow, right? And to identify bad thinking and to rechange it. All right, so what you thinking, Jackie?
How can we reach our higher self without trying to get rid of the negative talk? Like how can we, we try to go through our day-to-day, but there's always like that little part of that kind of holds us back. So how can we overpower that? Like what can we do that's practically mindfulness, like meditation, like how can we switch forward?
I mean, that's a really good question, and actually I would bring that to the group. So when you have negative talk, right, if there's a part of you that's saying you can't, like what things do you do to try to counter that negative talk? Because I believe and know that there's a whole lot of wisdom within the collective, right?
Shouldn't you focus on the actions first, like the actual things that have been happening versus the negative talk? Like for example, let's say, oh, I'm not good enough for this class, but then you got a 90% on the test, so you are good enough. So it's like you should focus on the actions of how you're doing rather than yourself negative talk.
Okay, so I'm going to translate that a little bit. I think what you're also saying is you should own your successes, right? So when you've been successful before, don't in your mind say that was luck. And I'm not saying that sometimes successes, we're not conscious of why we were successful, But that's what I'm going to be challenging you guys to do is like when you were successful at something, go back and say, why was I successful? What was my approach when I tried to accomplish that thing? And I want you to go through every single step you took. Break your actions down into steps. What step did I take? And so then when you are successful and you understand your approach and your process, Jackie, then you could be like, okay, now I can either replicate that because I see something similar, or I can modify that and put a little twist on it because it's slightly different, but I can still consciously try to figure out how do I receive that same results, or how do I get to that overcome that challenge or get to that solution, right? So I think that is a good idea. The other thing that I would say is that we have to learn how to be our best cheerleader, right? Like sometimes you gotta hype yourself up. You really do. And if you're not there yet, sometimes you gotta fake it till you make it. So I really believe in like positive affirmations, right? Like when I was in grad school, one of the best things that happened to me when I was getting ready to go to grad school was there was a fellowship that I was able to receive that I didn't take, but they sent me something in the mail and it was like 10 affirmations. And I was like, so I actually put it on in front of my desk, like I have my lab desk and I have my desk that I work at. I taped it to my desk, and you can imagine as a scientist, 90% of the time your stuff isn't working. So I'm walking into work each day and I would look at those affirmations. I was like, okay, all right, I'm the itch, okay. I would just sit there and go through those affirmations and be like, okay, let's go. And after a while, when you have that negative talk, that affirmation pops up in your mind and tries to replace it. Hold on. I'm moving into this negative talk. I'm moving to the spiral. Oh, no, you got this. Because remember, you're the itch. Remember, and so we have to be able to put those positive talks on automatic replay in our mind, especially when we feel vulnerable or feel like we can't do something, so we can hype ourselves up. Because at the end of the day, it isn't, people outside of you can tell you that you are a genius and that you're brilliant, that you're capable, but if you don't believe it internally, it doesn't really matter. Like, you have to believe it. And when you're taking that exam and it's just you, right? Like, it's just you up in that mud, the tutor isn't there, the professor's not there, all the people you study with aren't there. When it's just you gotta be like, okay, so who am I again? Okay, that's who I am. You gotta be able to be like, okay, let's go, right? Talk to me, Jackie.
I love that. Thank you so much. I did want to ask, just because I did just go, every day we go through life, things happen. Yesterday I got my backpack stolen out of my car, which has all of my notes, all of my books, my laptop, and instead of dwelling on why this happened to me, I just focused on, okay, what can I do to get my books? Let me get all of my books. Let me get all of my things. Let me get my notebooks. Instead of focusing, on just why things just keep happening to me, like, what can I do to make this better? Like, I just have to push forward. So yeah, I just wanted to say that these workshops have honestly been making my mind mentally stronger. Instead of just me just weighing on life keeps happening to me, I'm starting to switch that on I'm happening to life and trying to take control of my life and not let these things hinder me in my growth. Because easily, this was Jackie's 2 years ago, I would have been crying a hot mess, but I was really proud of myself to see how far I've grown, that I just didn't let this, get in the way of my midterms, of just, just staying stagnant and not doing anything. So yeah, I really love this sleep workshop. It's really been helping me.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. Like, it's one of the things we try to control our environment. We try to control the outcomes of things that we want. But there's one of my favorite quotes is security doesn't exist in nature. It's either we either on a flying adventure or it's nothing at all. but security doesn't exist. Nowhere in nature does security exist, right? So when things happen to us, we either find a way to say, how can I take this and grow and expand, or I'm a victim because of this and we contract, right? Change is a constant. We're either expanding in the moment or we're contracting, but we're not staying the same. So yes, I have to always convince myself when things happen, and I have to say, is this a test? Is this a test because right now I'm operating at this high frequency, right? And the person or the situation in front of me is operating at a low frequency. So do I let the situation take me down to their frequency? Or how do I maintain my high frequency? And that test happens to us all the time. It's like, do you pass it? Right? Because you have somebody who's in a really bad mood, and it's your family member or friend or partner or whatever, and they come in and you're in a really good mood and they say some stuff just to get you upset, and then when you get upset they start grinning like, damn, I feel better now. Because they took you from here down to their level. Or do you just say, I see you, I'm not going to react to that. You know, okay, this person's in pain, or this person is trying to work through this, and I'm going to maintain my high vibration, regardless of this person cutting me off on the freeway, regardless of me, this person stepping on my shoe. I see you, and I'm going to send them light and love and keep it moving. So anyway, it's just another way to think about all the things that happen to us each day. Like, how are you responding to it? Because that's what you have control over, is your reaction to what's happening to you. Your internal reaction to it or response to it, not the thing outside of you that's happening. Any thoughts? Any comments? You sure? All right, let's go. So, question number 1. Have you ever lowered your intelligence to make someone around you feel secure or comfortable?
No.
Never? Talk to me, Andrew.
I mean, if you're intelligent, you can use your intelligence to like excel and grow while you're also making others feel secure and comfortable.
Okay. I mean, if that's how you really engage life, that's the blessing. That is a huge blessing. Go ahead.
I have, just to make people around me feel comfortable, because I don't want to feel like I'm the know-it-all. So sometimes I hold back a little bit to make others feel comfortable, but I realize that I'm hurting myself in the process by doing it. And I don't know if that's because of, if it's more of insecurities of my own abilities, but I've taught myself doing that. And I've been trying to live more in my purpose and not hold back, feelings or how, if I have something I want to say, just to make other people feel, comfortable, like, no, say it. So I'm trying to, be more open and speak into like who I am and not feel.
Yes, it happens more than we think. I'll just say, I'm not a woman, but I'll say that sometimes women do that because they're around a guy they like and they're really smarter than them, but they don't want the guy to be intimidated by him, by how smart you are. So you may just kind of lower a little bit and be like, but the guy's not making good decisions, right? So do you follow him off the cliff, or do you kind of help right the ship? I can see as someone, a person of color in my community, I definitely have folks that ain't about itch, right? People who I grew up with, them are my homeboys, and, at a certain time in my life, we went ahead and enjoyed life together, but I've moved on from there. But when I hang out with them, sometimes I follow back down into like, okay, we just talking about a little bit of nothing. And I remember specifically, I had a mentor of mine, when I was finishing grad school, he's like, Fred, when you get a PhD, you're gonna lose some friends. I'm like, no, I'm not. He's like, you're gonna lose some friends. I'm like, no, I'm not. I said, because I'm still that cool person that I can match people on this level and that level. I'm being me, right? And guess what? Was he right? He was right. When I finished grad school, I threw a nice little party in San Francisco. My folks helped me run out a club. Invited all my people there, people that I went to college with, people I was in grad school with, people that I grew up with, in the town that I grew in. And guess what? Most of them did not come. Now, I'm like, damn, okay. You don't want to come and just hang out and chill? And it had nothing to do with me. But them coming to that event and seeing the people in my life now, considering they're still doing the same stuff they were doing like 15 years ago. They don't want to be reminded that like they're still doing the same thing they were doing 15 years ago. So I'm just not gonna go, right? So yeah, I've had to learn how to, because I believe that when you turn or dim your light for someone else, for whatever reason, one, you may not know how to turn that light back on, and you may not learn how to turn it on fully, as bright as it could go. Because you're changing yourself so someone else can feel secure or comfortable around you. And now I'm like, if you can't deal with the light, then that's what's up. Talk to me, y'all. What you guys thinking?
I was thinking that when I do lower my intelligence around other people, I never thought of it as making them feel secure. It was more like, it makes me feel more secure because then I can relate to them more, right? So then I can act on their same level rather than, I'm making you feel better. It's like, this is where I should be at in this environment, so that's why. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna challenge that a little bit. I'm not sure if I really could completely understand, because I lower my intelligence, I can relate to you more. Like, you could have wisdom and relate to nobody regardless of, you just communicate with them in the most effective way based on the level that they're at, but you're not lowering yourself. No.
Okay.
I'm gonna get to you in a minute.
So what you're trying to say is that I can still relate to them, but at a high level of intelligence. Is what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that I've gone to other countries where, and what I love about going to other countries where everyone in the culture is just different than where the culture you have. So you can learn from anybody. You can learn from the person who is driving the bus to whoever. And I can change the way, if the person doesn't speak English that well, to communicate with them effectively. But I don't have to know my intelligence because the communication piece may be a barrier for us to really have deep conversation, and they may want to go there. So sometimes we project onto that other person and lower it, preemptively. I'm not saying that's what you do. Go ahead, Joe.
Actually, yes, something to say first.
Okay.
I see it more as a trade-off, actually, in types of intelligence. So I think that, when you're toning down, let's say your intelligence, you're increasing or you're fully engaging your emotional intelligence. And you're using that to gauge whatever that person's reaction, and then you tone down, how much you're whatever your output is and whatever your content you're outputting. It allows you to change that and kind of modify it or kind of personalize it to that person.
I like the idea that you're saying of, you can have an increase of emotional intelligence to match where someone's at.
Yeah, I guess kind of what I was saying is you have two tanks, right? And you're operating at this level. If you need to tone down your intelligence, that's highly dependent on your emotional intelligence. So you're kind of just engaging a different type of intelligence. You're not necessarily toning down whatever. You're just tapping into another reservoir of intelligence that is overall I see as a blanket or a big tank of intelligence.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I like the idea of that. But you could also just view us as energy, right? At some level, we're all energy that's vibrating at a certain frequency. And, it's not that you have a reserve of energy in regards to how you match somebody, because I do believe that there is matching somebody intellectually or conceptually and matching somebody emotionally. But I'm not sure if I'm buying the tank piece where if I do one or the other, I can't have both.
Interesting.
This is a good conversation.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gerald.
Yeah, I actually had something. I think I felt what you were saying. I did have a comment on that, but I actually wanted to bring up Sam's comment.
Okay.
That he got up here. I thought was interesting. And he said, for me, instead of lowering my intelligence to make similar to others, I pretend to be as smart as others. Especially when I ask others to explain a STEM problem, even though I didn't understand it, I might say yes, I got it. And that's I think is a really big issue that a lot of STEM students kind of go through. So I don't want to bring that up to the group.
Yeah, I mean, he brings up a good point, and that's kind of part of, I don't want to use the word, again, faking it until you make it, but sometimes we project an image of ourselves that we're good and we know something when we really don't, and that may hinder you from fully unlocking your mind to let your light shine, because you're saying, no, I'm good. And in some ways, you could almost consider that a form of resistance. Because when we don't raise our hand in class to ask a basic question or a question that we think that other people are going to feel a certain way about us, then we're losing on the opportunity to grow. We're resisting the opportunity to grow because we're not speaking up and just knowing that who we are in that moment is enough, right? And that's why I always tell myself, especially when I was doing research, if I'm asking you for advice or for, your expertise on something, I know that I'm intelligent and I'm smart, but you probably have spent more time thinking about that thing than me. So I just need the opportunity to spend more time thinking about it and understanding, and I can get to a very similar level, whatever it is for me, but I'm not less than you because I'm asking for advice or trying to obtain knowledge from you. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that, and then the last comment for me. Like, I find it kind of weird that, like, the more education I have, the more I'm actually way more comfortable with asking questions now. Like, I think when I was trying to prove myself, I didn't want to ask questions. And now that I feel like I kind of validated myself, I'm like, oh, I can ask any question because I know how smart I am. And so, I mean, if I don't get it, this must be a very hard concept. So I'm going to give myself some grace and ask these questions. But yeah, I kind of find it funny. I think when I first got to this level, I thought it would be the other way around. I thought, like, oh, I'm going to know so much that I'm never going to ask anybody for anything. It's actually the complete opposite. I'm like, no, I want to know even more now. Things I don't know, I want to know more. I want to get people on my side that know these things. I don't think that's kind of interesting. I wonder if you felt similar.
I think you bring up a good point, and I think that, like, what it comes down to, at least in my mind, is your image of yourself and your self-esteem. And your self-esteem has grown as you've acquired more degrees and knowledge, but there's people who don't have those same degrees that still have a strong sense of self. And they can be like, I'm going to ask that mud because of whatever, right? How they're composed. Go ahead.
I think that it stems from, like, if you have confidence or self-worth in, like, how intelligent you are, I don't think that's a very good confidence, because, like, your confidence should be just for the sake of being a human, not for what you have or how better you are compared to others, because if somebody else is better than you, then you will become more, like, insecure. And then if somebody is worse than you, your ego, like, can raise, like, oh, I'm better than this person. So it should be more like, I'm a human, so it's like everybody's equal, and your self-worth isn't for, like, what you have or what you don't have, but rather that you're just a human. Yeah.
I agree. It's I believe that people come, they come into this life at different spiritual levels, I feel like people come into this life definitely with a combination of DNA that's different than anybody else. And so there's a combination of, you know, we can all learn and have knowledge, right? We can learn information and have knowledge, but that doesn't mean we have wisdom. Wisdom comes from a whole nother space, right? Of spiritual maturity in my mind, right? But we can all study in the same classroom. This person is really book smart, but they made bad life decisions, right? They can't master their thoughts or their emotions. That's different than the DNA that you have and the processor you have in your mind, or, you know, your capacity to memorize and take in information. So, you know, yes, we're all humans, but we're all sometimes on different levels of where we're at along this journey based on, you know, what you've been given from a hardware standpoint. I'll just say your DNA, and then what you're coming in there, you know, your spirit as well, and the maturity of it. Any thoughts, any comments? Y'all going deep today. That's how y'all feeling? All right, let's go. So, let's go ahead and jump to this next page real quick, because I think you're ready for a scenario. Rebecca is a college student who's pursuing a degree in genetics. She is the first person in her family to go to college and has to figure out how to be successful in college using outside resources. Rebecca tends to think differently than most and has a strong creative side. Math has always come easily to her, but for some reason she's having a challenging time in the first semester of general chemistry. She wants to do well in the course and believes she is putting in 100% of her effort. However, there is a part of her that pulls back so that she is actually only putting in 60% of her effort. Let's list potential reasons that would cause Rebecca to put in less than that 100. Not that you guys do that, but for other folks you may do that. Go ahead.
Well, I kind of do this, and I think it's because it's fear of failing. So if you only put in like 60% of your effort into something, you can be like, oh, I failed this because I didn't try hard enough. And I think like the reason that Rebecca does this is because like if she can like get through her math courses so easily, then she must have like this belief in herself that like if she doesn't struggle in math and it just comes easily to her, then shouldn't chemistry come easily to her? Or like if it doesn't come easily to her, then she'll just never get it. I think that's what she's thinking, because I sometimes have that thought.
Okay. So fail or failing. And I'll highlight this a little bit too, because I think this is kind of part of the self-sabotage. Because if you really try something at 110% of your effort and you're not successful, that hurts a whole lot more than when you only put 60% in and you're not successful. I didn't really give it everything. But when you give it everything and it's not successful, you're like, damn, well, what does that mean about me? But should that still stop us? Talk to me, y'all.
I also think that's like if she hasn't put as much effort into studying because it comes easy, then she might not know how to properly study for things like chemistry, like her methods of learning.
Okay, so she may not know how to move through challenging situations or obstacles that don't come easy to her. Okay. And you know, the elephant in the room is she just may be good at math, especially calculus, because she got a phenomenal memory and a good pattern recognition game. But chemistry a little bit more conceptual, and she doesn't understand, she hasn't worked that muscle yet, how to personalize those concepts where she can understand it. Right? Because you can get pretty far with a photographic memory, and I just did 100 problems, and I've seen this before. What else, y'all?
To add to that, so maybe from past experience with math courses, like hard math courses, like maybe linear algebra or calculus, she was going into that general chemistry course thinking things would be smooth sailing because it's like basically algebra, right? But then there's like some hidden details that she may have overlooked. And then by being so overconfident in her abilities, she kind of maybe ran into some unexpected issues because she was attacking everything all at once. So she needs to be isolating each problem, be more methodical about how she approaches each maybe. It's like problems, and then under that umbrella of maybe the major problem in chemistry of her could be little sub problems that she would need to tailor her approach to.
Okay, I like that. So, what I liked about what you said is that she may need to approach these problems more methodical, more systematic, because she may not be conscious of one, why she's good at math and why she's able to solve those problems, right? And sometimes we have to be able to break things into steps, right? So if it's not coming easy to her, she may need to slow down and say, well, how am I really approaching this problem? Am I just approaching it because the professor set it up this way, but I don't really understand what's happening? Am I just making sure that I plug in this formula, PV equals nRT, and see if my units are on point, but I don't really understand why pressure may be indirectly proportional to temperature, right? Like she has to be able to start to dissect out her thinking and be conscious of her thinking. But what other reasons, people in virtual land, do you think that people sometimes don't put that 110 or 100% in to the thing that they're doing? And the question is, how do we counter that? How do we make sure that whatever we're doing, we go full in every time? Any thoughts out there in virtual land?
I think the attitude of Rebecca to the chemistry is also important because Rebecca said she thinks the math is easier to her, so she might have more motivation to learn the math. But for the chemistry, because it's her first semester to learn it, so there might a lot of things to memorize for the chemistry. So she might think it was boring because she has a lot of things to memorize. But for math, it's different because she already learned math before, or she just thought the math easier, so she could have more time to put on it. Because people don't want to spend a lot of time to do something they were not familiar with. Yeah, that's my idea. Thank you.
You bring up some really good points, Sam. And one of the things that you bring up that I really feel that's important is you brought up motivation, right? Like, because some people are motivated and feel good about being right or having things come easy to them. And some people, as you're suggesting, are less motivated when they have to wrestle with something a little more and it doesn't come as easy. But I guess the question for me is which one of those situations is going to give you the most growth? Something that always comes easy to you? Or being able to build up a mental muscle because you have to build the muscle up and do something different to grow? And do you run away from that because you don't want that to be an indication of your self-worth and your ability if it goes in one direction versus the other? So we punt, right? And that's something that each one of us has to actually kind of wrestle with. I can say that the things that didn't come the easiest to me in my life enhanced the things that came easy to me. when I was able to work through that muscle. I wasn't the best writer. And I actually didn't really learn how to write till grad school. I mean, I got B's in English in college, but it's not like as a science major, you're really like writing a lot. I mean, we're doing problem sets, right? Like I can work through the math and I can, in this biology session, I can write all the different points that they're gonna outline to make sure I understand what I'm talking about, but it ain't like I'm really writing. I even took an expository writing class after I finished college before I started grad school because I knew how terrible my writing was. And in grad school, it came up that I can't really write that well. So I sat there and I was talking to myself, Jackie, because I had to get myself hyped up. Okay, it's gonna be gone. I was talking to myself and I was like, Fred, how do you know all these rules that deal with the life sciences and the natural universes and how these molecules come together and all these biochemical pathways, but you don't understand all the rules that deal with English and writing? Because your ass is lazy. I just didn't care enough, right? But in my mind, I was like, I always had flow. I always could talk for mine. So I just learned the rules, studied them. I got my papers in front of everybody that could mark it up in red, and I studied how they formulate their arguments and their sentences, and then I added my flow to it. And I went from someone who was like probably at the bottom top of the food chain to someone who was near the top of the food chain because I could add my flow to that mug and I was like good. And so started a publishing company, published books and workbooks. It enhanced my ability, but it was something that I had to wrestle with more than it just came easy because maybe back when I was younger, I didn't care enough to really focus on it and learn it. And I'm so glad because when you write well, you speak better. So something to think about. Any thoughts, any comments?
I don't really want to stray away from the topic, but I think it's somewhat related kind of in the aspect of fear of failing. Because I know a lot of people tell you like, oh, do what you're good at, which is true, but isn't it possible to be good at, I don't want to say everything because, but realistically if you put your effort in, isn't it possible to be good at whatever you want to do, not just you start from doing what you're good at because you're good at it, but you start doing something because you want to and then you become good at it?
I mean, when you say the word good, that's relative, right? So you could say competent at something. You can say extraordinary at something. But the word good is it's relative, right? It's relative to someone else. And I think that if you're able to have passion around the things that you're good at, because that's a talent that you have, then you can become extraordinary at that way of thinking or being. But if you don't have that talent, you can still be competent at that and maybe good at it if you want to use your own words, but you're not going to be extraordinary at it. And so the things that you're not good at, you want to be sufficiently good enough to manage that so you can focus on the things you can be extraordinary at, or have a team of people that can assist with the things that you don't like thinking about. Right? When you're really smart, there's a lot of things you could be good at. There's a lot of different professions or directions you could go in life. It doesn't mean that it would make you happy doing it. You could do it, but you could do it for the money. But is the money going to make you happy if you're not really passionate about it? So you actually have to search yourself and your soul a lot more to understand your passion than maybe the way my mind works. I'm only good at one or two things. So I kind of have to move in that direction versus these 10 things that I could do. Does that make sense? So it's every day I think I've shared before, there's the things that I have to do and there's the things that I want to do. And I always try to move the things off my plate that I have to do that I'm good at, but I like spending more time doing the things that I want to do that I'm passionate about. And when they overlining with the things you do each day, then you're winning. right? But a lot of times we at this stage have to take classes that you may not just like the material, but you still got to motivate yourself to get excited about it, to try to make connections, to try to master it, because it still is a stepping along your pathway to whatever you're going to be long term. And there's going to be other classes where, you know, you're going to be up at night dreaming about that information and putting it together because it's something that your mind likes to think about, right? But either or, you still have to figure out how to get through it and be successful, right? Does that kind of answer your question? Anybody else have any thoughts or comments? All right, so I think we can skip number 3. So 3A. So how do we deal with disappointment? How do we deal with you've put everything into that thing and you just weren't successful? That you put that 110% and things didn't kind of lay themselves out the way that you envisioned them. How do we deal with that?
Hold yourself accountable.
Okay. Now, what does that mean?
You take inventory of the things leading up to whatever event and then assess. You analytically assess.
Okay. And so when you do all that and you assess, is there something that you're saying to yourself to make sure that you're okay if you still gave 100%, 110% into that thing?
I think that's part of the assessment. It's to see if you gave 100% or whether you need to grow a little more or do something to grow more.
Okay. Anybody else? Go ahead, Dion.
I remember that when I was applying to college in high school, that I got really disappointed with like the decisions I got, and I remember like putting a lot of effort into the applications, but then after I got here, I started thinking I can't change what happened in the past, so I gotta change what's happening now to make my future better. That's what I always told myself, that to like push myself to become better.
So I'm going to translate that for you. A part of me feels like you're saying, try to focus on learning the lesson, and then take that and move on, move forward. Okay. All right. What else? I can sit here and say that if I'm doing something, I'm coming at it at 110%. If I'm not successful, I'm going to sit back, I'm going to reevaluate and think about all the reasons why I wasn't successful. I'm going to be honest with myself about it. I'm not going to sit there and fake the funk, right? And then I'm going to change up course because I'm not going to double down on the same thing I did before and hope for the same result. And then if I'm not successful that second time, I am still going to go back and reevaluate and be like, hold up, what else can I do? And maybe that third time, if I'm not successful, I'm okay with saying this may not be for me. But I'm at least going to not lay down like a lamb the first time something happens to me that's not successful. I'm going to probably go out at least 2 or 3 times. But really think about it and put myself in the best position to win. And if I'm not successful, I'm okay. I can live with that. I really can. I can let it go. But if I don't come at it 110% and I think to myself that I'm doing that, but I'm only putting in 60%, there's gonna be a part of me that's always gonna know like, cause you know how sometimes, I'm gonna say none of y'all, but I can think about myself where I've done that before in the past and I was talking to somebody else about what I did and I knew I was lying to myself about, yeah, I did da 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 da. I was like, no you didn't. I was like, shut up. Let me finish my story, right? But in your mind, you know it's a story you telling somebody because you really didn't do that. So it ain't like you can run from yourself. All right, Nietzsche, what you thinking?
Yeah, I was gonna say something along the lines of what you just said. You know, like, because it made me remember a time when I was applying for a position when I was working, like a higher role, you know, and like I'd work with my managers on how I can grow myself and like get a promotion, you know, and like I really thought I put in, you know, like my 100% into like becoming like, you know, better and growing myself. And, you know, like I really did. Um, but I go through interviews and that won't be the case, you know, like I'd notice someone else gets it. And I would think to myself, like, what's going on? Like, I definitely put in a lot more work and effort you know, into trying to get this position, you know, and you know that can be the case, but you know, when I put in my 100% or 110% and I don't get the results I'm looking for, you know, then like in that moment, is when I start searching perhaps 110% can look like something else. Like perhaps there's something that I didn't try, you know, like the other person who got this position is probably doing something a little different, you know, like, and what is that thing, right? Like, can I do that? You know, and then most likely if I tried giving something 100% the first time, um, that's something that I really, really want, you know, and that's something that I'm most likely gonna try to go for again and not just give up, you know, and so like on the second time that I try that thing, you know, I'm gonna incorporate some of the things that I learned from the first time and from like other people around me that maybe had success with it, you know, and put it towards like trying again, right? And you know, like 100% can look different for everybody, you know. It can even look different for you the first time and the second time, you know. And yeah, that's just my experience, but yeah.
No, thank you for sharing that, and I really like that a lot. And I like that you also talked about, you know, moving outside of yourself and seeing what other people may be doing. Maybe that person who did get that promotion or that person who was more successful at that endeavor and trying to learn from them too. And then incorporating that into your next approach. I mean, that's winning. But I think that like at the core crux of it is, can we be honest with ourselves? Can we really just be brutally honest with ourselves? And I'm saying that not everybody can do that. I believe they're capable. And I'm thinking about one person right now that I grew up with, you know, one of the ones that I was in the lukewarm hanging out with, and he could not do to this very day. He can't do it for himself. Smart guy. We started the community college together. He's a year older than me. You know, we're taking biology together, and I'll be studying with him, and I'll be like, oh, okay, you know, you got this? He's like, yeah, I got it. I was like, in my mind, like, no, you don't. So I would start asking some questions, and he didn't really know the stuff that, you know, he thought he knew, and he would learn it because I'd be, you know, quizzing him, and he could consistently get a B in the class. But he couldn't do it for himself. So I transferred to Berkeley, he transfers to Davis. He never graduated Davis. Couldn't do it for himself. And he would just lie to himself every time and be like, no, I'm good. It's deep. I almost choked him out a couple times for lying to me about some stuff. I mean, you think I'm playing? I was like, bro, why you lying to me? It's like, I'm keeping it real 100. Like, but whatever that block is in his mind, ability to create this fantasy of where he's at is strong. He's extraordinary at that. But it's hindering him from being successful. Because as a student of science, I really believe that how successful you are is directly proportional to your self-integrity and how honest you are. We're not in a discipline where your memory and your pattern recognition game is going to get you that far into the future of being successful. If you really don't know something, it's going to come out on that exam or at some point. It's going to come out. And then when it does, what do? But it's going to come out. If there's holes or gaps in your knowledge, they're going to come out. So you have to be honest. You just have to, in my opinion. All right, let's move on. So you guys like talking a lot. You know what I'm saying? Oh, yeah. That's right, I said that. All right, so we're going to try this exercise called tearing down the wall. And this is something that I've done a lot in my life. I came up with this exercise based on a mentor of mine who gave me a variation, then I modified it and put a little twist on it. But at one point, I was giving a talk. I published the first book that I published was called Finding New North. And I gave a talk to the UCSF community on this book and the need for diversity in science. And I know that's a dirty word right now, but I was giving this talk on diversity in science, and I'm gonna keep it real. I feared it. I feared the hell out of it. It's one thing for me to get in front of you and talk about my research, and it's another thing to talk about my opinion on why I believe diversity is important. Right? It's my opinion. It's more personal to me than talking about these figures and this leg and this and this lane. No, it's different, right? So he was saying, Fred, like you have this wall in front of you, and on the other side of the wall is you giving this talk. So he says every day you need to figure out how to break down pieces of the wall. So then come next week on whatever it is, you step over the wall and you give a good talk. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try anything right now because I'm scared, right? So it was actually the night before that talk. I still hadn't written it yet, right? But I'm like, the wall's kicked down. I gotta figure out. I'm like, come on, give me something, right? So I stepped over the wall. I'm like, all right, what's different over here? And it formulated how I was going to actually present my thoughts to the science community. And I talked about how, the crux of science is asking questions. Like that's what scientists do. They ask questions. And I said, the kind of questions that you ask is based on how you grew up and the things that are important to you. Someone doesn't spend 30 years working on cancer without it being something that they have a personal connection to. Right? Maybe their grandma died of cancer. I mean, this is kind of how we are sometimes as humans, right? But then I said, okay, people ask different questions based on their genetics. And there's studies about this group being in this environment and what they needed to survive is going to think different than this group in this environment. Like those things, epigenetically are still stored in our DNA. And then I brought up the example about how sickle cell anemia, something that primarily affects people from Africa and sub-Saharan Africa, is actually something that counters malaria, how it was discovered in the 1920s. But people didn't start doing research on it, major research, 50 years later. And I said, so 84% of scientists are white males. What do you think if there was more diversity and people who are affected by that disease were scientists? Do you think there would have been a 50-year gap between them doing research on it? Right? So I said, what would science look like 25, 50, 100 years from now if each person from all these different backgrounds and groups who ask or want to ask different questions that they care about have the power to find solutions to it. And I was like, we don't know. So let's do the experiment. They were like, damn, okay, right? I had to formulate my argument, and it was something that they couldn't counter. Let's spend the next 25 or 50 years actually doing the experiment and changing that in a way where we can give that to the world, right? But it was parts of this technique that I was actually thinking about that got me to the other side of the wall. So this is gonna be an exercise that I want you guys to do right now. We're gonna set in right now. You don't have to talk about what you're gonna focus on, but what I want you to do is think about something right now that you fear. Fear is one of those things where it's like a weed. You know, inside of our mind, that weed pops up. You know, you either can look at the fear, figure out how to pluck it up by its roots, or you could ignore the fear and the shit grows into a big ass tree, a big weed tree, right? But even if you pluck it up, you know, you gotta constantly monitor because, oh, there's another weed that popped up over there, right? Do I ignore it or do I go there and pluck that mug up by its roots? But it's just something that pops up in all of our space until we really become fearless, right, of everything. That's a whole nother story. But I want you to think about right now for a few, 15, 20 seconds, something that you really fear. And we're gonna do this visualization exercise where we're gonna, what I call, tear down the wall. So on this exercise, and I wanna talk you guys through this, so at some point when you do this exercise, we're gonna get into, none of these things are good. I want you to create a wall in your mind that represents this fear. And in the middle of that wall, I want there to be a brick that represents more specifically that fear that you're trying to wrestle with. And through this visualization exercise, we're going to see if we can get to the other side of what it really means or where it's coming from. All right? So I want you guys to sit up in your chairs, wherever you're at. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to block out everybody around you. No matter who's around you, for people in the virtual land, there's probably no one around you. For people at this table, if the person in front of you, behind you, beside you has bad breath, just block it out, right? I just want you to focus on what you want to do right now in regards to coming to your breath. So I want you to slow things down, and I want you to take 7 deep breaths. All right, I want you to inhale. 1, 2, 3, hold that. And then I want you to exhale. 2, 3. I want you to go ahead and inhale. I want you to exhale. And I just want you, as you take that breath, to just focus on the quality of your breath right now. I want you to focus on the sweetness of your breath. And I want you to think with gratitude how grateful you are to be able to breathe and be present in this moment in time. So you're just taking these deep breaths and you're letting all of your thoughts go away. You're not thinking about any test or exam. You're not thinking about anything. You're just present right now in this moment with your breath. And I want you to take a couple more breaths. And as you take those couple breaths, I want you to go ahead in your mind's eye, put up your visualization of this wall. This wall that represents something that you fear. Maybe it's a wall of something that is a class that you may fear, or the unknown, whatever that is, have that be represented in this wall. And then I want you to find that brick, the brick in the middle of that wall. What color is that brick that represents this fear? Is it red? Is it gold? What does it look like? And as you visualize that brick, I want you to reach your hand out and I want you to pull that brick from the wall. And I want you to ask yourself, what is the cause of this fear? Can you reveal yourself to me? And I want you to take the time and just receive all that is being given to you in this moment about that fear. And then afterwards, I want you to blow that brick up in whatever way that's meaningful to you. You can see it turn on fire. Maybe that brick transforms itself into something else that's useful to you. But I want you to go ahead and neutralize that brick. And see if there's any last messages that are being given to you in this moment. And then afterwards, I want you to go ahead and slowly open your eyes and write down anything from this that is meaningful to you. All right, I want you to go ahead and finish that last thought if you can. All right, so how was it? How was the exercise for folks?
It was helpful for some reason.
You said it wasn't helpful?
No, it was helpful for some reason. It was weird because I saw the color green right away, and I think that represents disgust because something has to do with my fear. I think the fear was the fear. I think the reason for my fear was the fear of being perceived. And it was because by being perceived, it would create disgust in others. And I think that, because my fear was like, for example, I am scared of talking to new people, or I'm scared of raising my hand in class and like in front of a lecture. So I was like, why is this fear, what's the reason for this? And then I think when I saw the color green, I think that represented disgust. I think that it's like the fear of being perceived, and it created disgust, like people rejected me. And then it was like, for some reason, like breathing and everything, like it changed. I don't know what happened. I don't know why it like fixed it.
So you're still processing?
I think, no, because I think it fixed it, but I don't know why it fixed it. Does that make sense?
Right, that's the part you're still processing.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it'll come to you, right? It's there. You're still processing.
Oh.
All right. Anybody else want to share anything? How it was for them?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I didn't finish writing though, but I'll just read what I wrote. So I said my focus fear was scientific writing. The wall had bricks with words moving around in like a flashy sort of way, like television static. And this could probably represent the inability to connect ideas in a proper way to express findings. But one brick stood out, and had like the color of the ocean, like a bit turquoise, kind of clear. And when I put it out, there's like waves of words of different colors on it. So like it was super vibrant, right? It started flowing, and possibly like reinforced the idea that maybe I might be too rigid in my writing. And yeah, like the waves, they're still kind of random, like the words flowing like static, right? Like you still understand them. And then yeah.
Nice. I mean, it's a beautiful image you kind of created for us to be able to go there with you and see that. Sometimes too, water in that kind of meditative state represents your emotions too. So I'm not sure if that's the case with you. I'm just throwing that out there. All right. Anybody else want to share anything? And you don't have to, you don't have to share anything specific. You can just talk more about how the process may have been for you.
So for me, my biggest fear so far is like I might fail my transfer, like the school I am opted for. So in this meta image, it feels like a wall is closing up on me, and the color might be gray because it's gray because I really don't see any way out. See, I'm holding so tight to that expectation of transfer to the school on my best transfer. What if I fail and I feel like I don't think of any other like solutions or any other alternatives so far. And so my way to tackle this wall, this mental wall that is restricting themselves, that is self-limiting, and that is I want to break up the wall. Then I need to think of any backup plan. I mean, if I fail, maybe that's a signal that I should try, perhaps, to work on my profile or second job, or to see other possibilities. Yeah.
I mean, I think that fear is real, and I feel like, we've all been in and may right now be in a very vulnerable place of someone else potentially deciding what our next steps are. And I think that it's when, I really feel like when to manifest, you have to visualize what you want. You have to see it. You want to see it in detail. You want to feel yourself there, and then you have to learn how to then let it go. Right? Because what we don't know is what's going to be the best pathway for you long term. And there's infinite ways for you to get to where you want to get to in life. It doesn't have to be that one way. Like in our mind, we're like, no, it has to. No, it doesn't. It doesn't have to be that one way. But you've done your work, right? And you've presented yourself, and you've written with passion who you are, and then you just let it go. But if you want to call it failure, but with the other institution not believing it's a good fit, then it just opens your ability to bring who you are as a person to that institution that believes it's a good fit. And you're not diminished because, no person, place, or thing can diminish you unless you allow them to. That you're priceless no matter what, right? So anyway, I'm just reframing that because we get so fixated, it has to happen this way, it has to happen this way. And I really believe we get what we need, not what we want. You hoping that what you need and want overlap with each other, right? But sometimes they don't, but that's okay. Your job is to be the best computer scientist, programmer, to use your creative mind and to add value to the world, period. And that could be at one place or another.
What does it mean if you saw a scale?
If you think what?
Like, I saw a scale.
A scale?
Yeah.
Like something that weighs something?
Yeah, I don't know why. So weird.
Wait, judgment?
Yeah.
But you're still processing though.
I
So,
know, it's
so.
really random
It's,
stuff.
but I, you know, like, so this is the thing, is that the reason why I came up with this exercise and the more specifics of the way that it is we all have things that are unconsciously in our unconscious or subconscious that may or may not be sabotaging or hindering us from reaching our highest potential. And from my standpoint, I want to know what it is, and I want to be able to eliminate it and heal it, right? We don't want to react to life and not be able to respond to life, right? We don't want to have everything that happens to us. Oh, why are you so angry? I don't know. Because you didn't maybe spend time reflecting on, getting quiet and figuring out why are you so triggered about this and that? Or why are you so emotional in a very reactive way because someone said something to you that you perceived as tearing you down or doing whatever, right? So there's always things behind it. And for me, it's the gift of being able to identify it and letting it go. I've had walls that were like 45, 50 bricks. And every day I removed 2 or 3 bricks. It took me like a month to get through that wall. And I remember there's parts of the wall of this overall fear that when I took those bricks out, they seemed unrelated, but they kind of were connected to that fear in ways that I just never really knew. I'm like, damn. You may have things in your space that happened to you when you were like 7 years old in second grade. Some teacher told you that you don't even remember anymore, but it's still lodged in your subconscious in a way that's stopping you from raising your hand in class because they outed you or they shamed you or they hit you with a ruler. I mean, whatever, right? I'm just saying that, like, whatever that thing is still stopping you from expanding and being at your highest ability and maximizing your potential, then how do you have and use tools that can help you get to that next level or where you want to get to, right? This exercise has nothing to do with anybody else, right? It's you focusing on and developing yourself. And until you believe that inner work on yourself is just as much or more important than this academic work, then you're still going to just be reacting to life. That inner work is really, really, really important. Because we've already established that you have to be completely honest with yourself as a student of science. You have to have self-integrity around the things that you know or believe you know, and having it be actually aligned with what you actually know. And those are emotions that can blind you and make that a lot more cloudy than not. Talk to me, y'all. What you guys thinking? Any other thoughts or comments as we try to close things out for today? So it's this idea again of self-sabotage, right? It's this idea of resistance. Are there any things that's happening in your life right now that you're resistant to? And if you feel yourself bracing or being resistant to something that someone's saying or an opportunity, then that may just be a message or a clue for you to take a deeper look at that and find ways to then identify why that's there and then use some tools to hopefully eliminate or neutralize it. All right? So, guys, have a great rest of the weekend.